The question today, my friends, is where are we going to go with this ZX81 kit? We've got a couple of things left here to work on. Last time we put almost every part that we had knolled out onto the board, and the board started looking even better than it did when we first got it. Now it's got some color and some population and some stuff standing up and laying down and all that kind of jazz. So we need to get back into it, and welcome back. Here we are getting back into it. IC sockets look like what they want us to do next. On the instructions, carefully and gently align the socket. Carefully and gently align the socket. Visually check before you do any soldering. Can be tricky to keep the socket flush. Remember to check. So I got 40, 24, 40, 18, and 18. Let's run out of sockets. Let's run out of parts. I felt like when I left the last video, I left my soldering iron on and then I left the house. And then when I got back to the house, I totally forgot to check it. It was off. We're okay. All right. Sockets. And there's a lot of different ways to do these. These are the sockets that it came with. These are single wipe sockets, but that's okay. I'm going to go with it because why not? And when you do sockets, there is a notch in the socket. You guys have probably heard this 1,000 times, but for those of you that haven't heard this one yet, there is a notch in the socket that corresponds to the notch on the board. And this one's going to be interesting. Okay, good. For IC2, there's actually two different silk screens. I don't know if you guys can see that on the camera or not, but there is a silk screen mark right there, and then one right above it. Oh, dropped it. And then luckily for us, this is the bigger one, so I don't have to make a decision. I just put it in and it works. And I lost my 40 pin when it fell, so let's put the 40 pin back in. And then IC3 is 40 pins. And these are all looking pretty good so far because they came in this foam, so they don't need persuasion. And then IC4A and 4B. So this is more of a pronounced notch on this side than the other side. So I'm going to put it in that way. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but it will work for my eyes. And then if you look through, you can see the notch on the silk screen. So we're good to go on that. Soldering iron is all warmed up. Let's get our solder out. Solder out. All right, somebody raided my drawers again. So we're going to use Scotch tape a second time instead of what I had planned, which was going to be masking tape. And like I said in the last video, you can use soldering, you can use glue tack, you can use tape here like I'm doing. You can also just hold it up and do some magic with your hands. But the goal is just to get the sockets held in place enough to get the job started. And then we'll come back and we'll get the job finished right after that. So what I'm going to do when I finish taping all this stuff down is I am going to tack down one corner of this socket and then check my work and verify that it's all stuck in place. And since there are a bunch of sockets to check, I'm going to do a bunch of them and then go back and check them. So now we've got one pin down on each of these. And just because every time I touch this tape, the thing runs away from me, I'm grabbing a pair of pliers to make my life easier. And now we can check our work and we can see that some of these are sticking proud of the board. And so what we do is we bring our soldering iron back and we put some pressure on it, on the socket. And then we heat up the solder and get it to stick to the board properly. There we go, that one snapped into place. And I just want to hold it just a little bit until the solder solidifies again. All right, and now they all look good. So now I can do the rest of them. Okay, so I skipped this socket here because for some reason that last pin is completely missing. And I don't know why. So I'm going to get out my desoldering iron and remove those two blobs there and see if I can fix it. All right, this is the A-Nesty ZD915. There will be a link in the description down below for this. And it is not the best, it's not the worst. It does get the job done. And it is a vacuum pump built-in solder sucker. And there we go. Usually it doesn't work that well. Yep, that pin was completely bent over. So that's what was going on there. Let's see if we can get that fixed. I was actually thinking to myself while I put these things in that was really easy. All those pins were straight. I even made the comment about the foam being really helpful and all that jazz. And then this. And this time I'm going to use a different method for getting that socket stuck to the board. I'm going to put a little bit of solder on the tip of the iron. I'm going to hold it in place with my finger. And I guess by a little bit of solder on the tip, I mean a lot. And then we'll check our work. That looks good. Let's do it the rest of the way, and then we'll touch those up on the way back. All right, that looks good. Get out our check mark pen and start making check marks with our check mark pen. All right, so now we have the voltage regulator coming on board, and the voltage regulator's got a couple of different things that needs to be done with it. Voltage regulator and heatsink need to go in a particular way round. Just follow figure 4, this one right here. If you were an experienced kit builder and happen to have some heat shrink thermal joint compound, it wouldn't hurt to put some between the regulator and the aluminum heatsink. This only becomes important if you add a number of peripherals to your computer, and this regulator is called upon to provide power for them. Well, let me see. I probably do have some of that goo thermal compound. I got some. And it's the Arctic MX4 thermal compound that everybody loves so much. All right, let's find the heatsink pad. The 7805 right here. We have the aluminum heatsink. We have the thermal compound, nut, screw, and washer. Okay, and then where does it go on the board? There. There. That's not good. Because it doesn't show you where it goes on the board, because it certainly doesn't go there. It has a little bit of a bend to it, so it needs to go up that way. But then it also still needs to fit inside the case. Let's grab the bottom of the case. We'll put the board in like the board belongs. Like so. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to put it on like that. So let's get the voltage regulator out. Now we can get rid of this piece of paper. But I find it interesting that they made this voltage regulator when they have an external power supply that's already converting 9 volts. It's converting 120 volts AC to 9 volts DC, and then we're converting 9 volts DC into 5 volts DC. Why don't we just take that on the external power supply and convert the whole thing all at once? All set from that perspective. Goo on my desk, so I gotta get that fixed. I'll be right back. All right, we'll get the rest of that off later. Okay, so I gotta solder that down. Otherwise, we're not gonna be doing anything. That would be very awkward. Why isn't it working? Because there's no power. Why is there no power on the regulator? Because you didn't solder it down. All right, we got the 7805 done, we got the heatsink done, we got the heatsink compound, we got the nut, the screw, and the washer on there. All right, jacks. We have 3.5 millimeter for power. So we need these guys here. These are the keyboard connectors. We'll do those in a bit. And these are all identical, which is a problem and kind of a blessing. All right, and to be adventurous, this is the mounting putty that we were talking about before. Well, that didn't last very well. I guess Gorilla can make a good glue, but can't make a good piece of cardboard to hold it. What we're going to try this time is putting some of this stuff here down to hold this stuff in place. That worked out okay. I probably should have done the trick that I did the last time, where I put down one pin and then checked my work. So let's do that. Let's learn from our mistakes the last time and fix this one. Okay, and everything's fixable. I fixed the first one. We'll fix the second one. We'll fix the third one. It'll happen again. Don't worry about it. These are large holes and big connectors. And they're human interface devices. So you got to put a little bit more solder than you're used to in there. Just be mindful that you're possibly melting plastic on the other side. All right, we got those two done. Let's remove the glue. It's okay. This stuff might not be heat strong, so this might not be a good one to use. Or they could always look like that, and I just don't have a lot of experience with them. You know, how do you learn if you don't try stuff? Came off better that time. Those three are all set. And then they want the TV modulator, which is this thing here. And it would go over here somewhere, like so, and then those wires would tap down. And I want to check to see if I need to put this thing on or not if I'm going to be doing the composite mod. See how the composite mod. The ZX vid fixes the composite problem that is inside of this device here, and also takes us off of RF. And this is cleverly sized and shaped, which might have kind of given it away a little bit, to fit inside of there. So we will do that at a compositomy surgery a little bit later on. And for now, we're going to keep on keeping on. We're going to skip right past this whole section here and see what's next. Very, very important. Read this before installing the keyboard connectors KB1 and KB2. Two different brands of connectors have been used by Sinclair, and there is an important difference between them. Brand 1 connectors. These are the original Sinclair connectors. If you align the connector within the printed rectangle on the PC board, things will work out properly. See figure 12B, which is this one here. Brand 2 connectors. If you align these connectors according to the printed rectangles on the PC board, you will be putting them in backwards. Figure 12C shows you how to properly install the connectors if you have them in your kit. 12C. We're going to have to do a little bit of investigative and intelligent deductive reasoning stuff. With either brand of the connector, proper installation of the connectors can be accomplished if you make sure the following holds. KB1 connector must have its contact springs away from the nearest PC board edge. KB2 must have its contact springs nearest to the nearest PC board edge. Away and towards. Okay. So now we got to figure out which ones we have, and then we got to get those ones put in, and we'll use our glue tack again since it's handy. This is interesting. What this tells me is that this set of instructions were added to the kit. So the kit was shipped over to the US, and then they put in US instructions and maybe a US power supply? I don't know, because I've got a US power supply and I've got what appears to be US instructions. So, all right, so we need, the smaller one is KB1, and the larger one is KB2, and we want properly installed. So KB1, the smaller one. Connector must have its contact springs away from the nearest PCB board edge. So that sounds like that. The springs are away. Put our glue tack in place. KB2 is the bigger one. Connector must have its contact springs nearest the PC board edge. Up and down. Up and down. Okay, so it looks right. Next thing I'm going to do is actually get out the keyboard and check that out. And that does, it's going to be hard to show that, So this is the case. That's the way the circuit board sits inside the case. We'll move the case out of the way. This cable here would then fold over. So those exposed contacts go that way, and these exposed contacts go that way. That looks good to me. We'll find out and make repairs if we were wrong. Integrated circuits. The ICs have one end identified by a notch and or dimple. Yep, we know that. So IC1 is the Sinclair Logic IC. Sure. So that would be the ULA. IC3 is the microprocessor, which means that one there must be this one here. All right, there's the ULA. IC2 is the 2364 ROM. This doesn't say it's a 2364, but it's the only one that's going to fit. IC2 is only 24 pins, but it is being inserted into a 28-pin socket. Notice the printed marking on the printed circuit board. The IC should be inserted accordingly. We did talk about this a little. Okay, so it's 4 pins down. So they want it to align with the bottom of the socket. That is just awkward. I wonder why they did that. These ones are a little splayed out, so I'm going to bend them over. And there we go. The top 4 pins are exposed because they're supposed to be exposed according to the diagram. All right, microprocessor, the Z80A or the D780C-1 microprocessor. So that's what this one here is. This is the D780C-1. And we noticed that the circuit board was 1980 and a couple of other parts were 1980 as we went along. And now we've got some chips, and chips have date codes on them. Let me get this one in. And we'll get the last 2 in. And they make IC lead formers to make this a little bit easier. But we will persevere without an IC lead former. Maybe we won't, because I just bent some pins. Now let's try that again. All right, they are all on there. So let's check out these chips. This one is the 8th week of 1983, 5th week of 1983. I don't know about that date code. 8237X5. So the 37th week of 82, maybe? This is the 11th week of 83, this is the 11th week of 83. And it's interesting that these are in 2 different kinds of packaging. This one's more plastic, this one's more ceramic. I'm sure they're both plastic, but as far as textures and feels go. All right, so I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chips installed. We're out of chips, we're out of sockets. Let's go down the list here. ULA, ROM, microprocessor, and RAM chips. All right, keyboard case. Refer to the assembly instructions, page 4, sections 7I and 7II. Did we do that? Okay, I might not have those assembly instructions. Yeah, so this is definitely not the Sinclair assembly instructions. This is something that was adapted to the Sinclair assembly instructions. That's interesting to note. Okay, the following self-tapping screws require a Phillips head screwdriver. Good. And 4 adhesive rubber feet. Okay, we're not going to do that just yet because I still need to get the video part done. So what we'll do is we'll end this video here, and then we'll get after the video and the final assembly and testing in the next one. There is a video right here I think you will enjoy next. Thanks for being awesome.